Poison as Food, Poison as Antidote by Roderick posted on c4ss.org on November 30th, 2012 as a part of the Art of the Possible Recovered category. Those who see government power and corporate power as being in conflict and those who see them as being in cahoots each have a point. The alliance between government and the corporate elites is like the partnership between church and state in the Middle Ages. Each one wants to be the dominant partner. So there's naturally some pushing and shoving from time to time, but on the other hand, the two parties have a common interest in holding down the rest of us, and so the conflict rarely goes too far. The main difference between, quote, left-wing and, quote, right-wing versions of statism, as I see it, is that the former generally seeks to shift the balance a bit farther in favor of the state, i.e. towards state socialism, while the latter generally seeks to shift the balance a bit farther in favor of corporatism and plutocracy. In the U.S., the reigning versions of liberalism and conservatism are arguably both more corporatist than state socialist, but the liberals are still a few notches farther towards state socialism than conservatives are. But whether the special interests who are the primary beneficiaries of state power are mainly within the state apparatus or mainly outside it, the actual application of state power remains much the same. Hence, it is a mistake to suppose that the corporatist plutocratic version of statism is in any interesting sense less statist than the state socialist version. But it is an all too common mistake, and this tendency to underestimate the chasm between free markets and corporatism is enormously beneficial to the state, enabling a slick bait and switch. When free markets and government grants of privilege to business are conflated, those who are attracted to free markets are easily duped into supporting plutocracy, thus swelling the ranks of statism's right wing, while those who are turned off by plutocracy are likewise easily duped into opposing free markets, thereby swelling the ranks of statism's left wing. These are two tendencies that Kevin Carson calls, quote, vulgar libertarianism and, quote, vulgar liberalism, respectively. As one of the villains in the Fountainhead explains in A Moment of Frankness, talking about the choice Europe was then facing between communism and fascism, quote, if you're sick of one version, we push you in the other. We fix the coin. Heads, collectivism. Tails, collectivism. Give up your soul to a council, or give it up to a leader. But give it up, give it up, give it up. Offer poison as food, and poison as antidote. Go fancy on the trimmings, but hang on to the main objective. End quote. The largely, though not completely, illusory conflict between state-oriented Palpatine and corporate-oriented Dooku in the Star Wars prequels is a nice dramatization of the same principle. This dynamic applies in particular to the debate over healthcare policy. The contrast between the Canadian and American approaches is frequently described by both sides as a contrast between a, quote, governmental or, quote, socialized system on the one hand and a, quote, market-based or, quote, free enterprise system on the other. But the American healthcare system bears little resemblance to a free market. Instead, it represents massive government intervention on behalf of private special interests, from insurance companies to the medical establishment. The choice between the American and Canadian models is simply a choice between two different flavors of statism, each with somewhat different vices. It's true, e.g. do you prefer higher prices or longer waits, but ultimately coming down to a matter of the percentage to which control of your health care is exercised by people sitting in government offices, as opposed to being exercised by people sitting in governmentally privileged, quote, private offices, but in either cases by ambitious, avaricious apparatchiks who aren't you. So, what would a libertarian approach to healthcare policy look like? At a minimum, it would have to include 1. Repealing laws that have the effect of cartelizing the medical industry, e.g. the licensure monopoly granted to the AMA, thus artificially boosting the cost of medical care. 2. Repealing laws that have the effect of rendering the labor market oligopsonistic, thus artificially lowering people's ability to pay for and collectively negotiate for medical care. 3. Repealing laws that shift healthcare funds from the 25% devoured by overhead voluntary sector to the 75% devoured by overhead coercive sector, thus decreasing the amount of healthcare that gets to needy recipients. 4. Repealing laws that transfer the power to make medical decisions for individuals from those individuals to centralized bodies, thus increasing the impact and scope of fatally bad decisions and suppressing the competitive signals that allow the identification of better and worse policies. 5. Repealing laws that wiped out the old mutual insurance systems, basically HMOs run by the patients instead of by corporations, and empowered insurance companies at the expense of patients. 6. Repealing laws that suppress innovation and distribution in the pharmaceutical industry in the name of, quote, intellectual property. Until the unlikely day when the Republican Party embraces this program, let's hear no more of their favoring a free market approach to healthcare. This entry was posted on August 28, 2008. You've been listening to Poison as Food, Poison as Antidote by Roderick posted on c4ss.org on November 30th, 2012 as a part of the Art of the Possible Recovered category, and read by Nick Ford. You've been listening to Feed 44, a project of C4SS, otherwise known as the Center for Stateless Society. To learn more, please visit us at c4ss.org.